working in factories in Coventry till the age of 32, working as a nightclub doorman. I left conventional employment in 1992, became a full-time martial arts instructor, writer, buccaneer, and now my job is writing and talking to people. That's it. All I do is sit in my essence. Violence destroys everything. So we've got to encourage kids to lift themselves up and make that below their game. Ultimately, I realised I wasn't really afraid of violence. I wasn't afraid of being hit or being hurt or being left or being abandoned. I was afraid of the feelings that it evoked.
Okay.
And the feelings came from a perception. So I traced it right back to the root. If I can change the perception, I can change the reality.
Geoff, I'm going to ask you something. Something you talk about in your book is duck syndrome. Now, I couldn't find any explanation of actually what duck syndrome was. I think I've got an idea, but
I think he made it up.
but my perception, and I'd just like you explain
Yeah.
duck syndrome, is my understanding from reading it is about you might be really scared and underneath your heart's pounding and inside you're feeling the fear,
Yeah.
but externally you're not showing it.
Yeah.
Is that kind of
Yeah,
duck
that's
syndrome?
what it is. Yeah, it's when you watch a duck on the water, the duck looks very calm and it glides, but underneath the legs are going like mad. So it's basically saying you develop these are just terms I've made up, but we develop an eye wall. You know, like if you get a storm,
Yeah.
you get the centre of the storm, which is completely calm. But around the centre of the storm is an eye wall. If the eye wall breaks, it's chaos.
Right.
But the centre, so we can create an eye wall around the centre of a storm. So we can have massive amounts of pressure, which I have every day, and I'm sure you do as well. You know, I'm doing talks and I'm teaching and stuff. Especially because some of the people we teach are very discerning, very challenging. So you've got a massive amount of pressure inside, like a natural release of adrenaline, because you've got this potential challenge to what you're trying to pass on to people or a situation. But in the centre of it, you've created an eye wall, so you can sit yourself inside that and observe all of those things, but not engage them. You can observe them, but not identify with them. You know they're there. You don't panic with them because you're used to them. They're hugely challenging because these feelings are always trying to break the eye wall. If they break the eye wall, then we collapse. We get collapsed. We get, we can't do the talk, we can't do the confrontation, or we can't deal with the situation, we collapse. That's where people tend to just melt down.
Stage fright?
Stage fright is a good example. People drying up when they talk. People just falling out of marriages because they can't cope with the pressure, or with their job, or with mortgages, or whatever the life situation is. So we create an eye wall. But fortunately or unfortunately, the only way to create an eye wall is to be in a storm.
Yeah.
You don't create an eye wall from reading a book or from a theory. You create an eye wall by placing yourself under pressure. So when I was a doorman, for instance, we had a tremendous amount of threat every single night of violence. So I was able to create an eye wall where I sat inside this eye wall. My consciousness was inside that. My body was flooded with adrenaline. My negative ego would be trying to break through and say, run for your life, and I'd be able to hold myself within the eye wall and pick my voice up above the quiver, because adrenaline makes us monosyllabic, it makes our voice quiver, makes us not want to talk at all. You'd be able to override that from the eye wall and talk because you've got no fear at all. So on the surface it looks like you've got no fear, but your body is actually, underneath it's going like mad. So you'd even maybe tap your foot to just release the tremor of adrenaline in your legs.
Okay.
And you would sometimes maybe you would take a deep breath. Who was talking, I might go, I know what you're saying, but
right,
so I would use breath, but hidden breath, to be able to calm the adrenaline, because if you don't steady the adrenaline, if you don't calm the adrenaline, your voice goes a quiver, or you lose your voice completely. You become very monosyllabic, and you freeze, or you run away. Yeah. So the duck syndrome is about creating an eye wall and sitting inside it. So we used to do a lot of training a lot of pressure training in the gym, and the pressure training was harder than the training outside.
Okay.
Because the unconscious mind doesn't know the difference. You take it, you bypass cognition, you go straight for the adrenaline. So the unconscious mind thinks this is real. We've got adrenaline, we want to run away. So you give people a chance to flight test that in a controlled environment. But it's uncontrolled enough for people's unconscious to believe it's real, and it believes it's real because it drops massive amounts of adrenaline. So I say to people, okay, we're going to do Animal Day now. We're going to do full out fighting, and most of you are going to be monosyllabic. So before we do it, we need to talk to each other. So people go very quiet. They don't want to talk. They can't find the words. So you get them to communicate. You get them to talk. You maybe get them to sit in it for an hour before they actually, do the fighting. And then you say to them, now you're under pressure. You've got to control your mind. Your mind wants to scatter. Your survival instinct wants to run, but we've decided we're going to override that. This is where you practice. So you practice hiding every effect of adrenaline by sitting in the eye wall. And then later on, when you got that control, you can play with it. So if I wanted to give you a false sense of security, I might let a bit of that fear dribble out and let you hear it. Okay. So I might say, well, I don't want to fight you, I'm afraid. Or I might let you, if it's a confrontation, I might let you hear it in my voice. I might let it come through. I might let a bit bleed into my face so you can see it. So then when I let you see it, you're unconsciously you will think I've won. So you'll go from a state of adrenaline to a state of elation because I've won. So I'll make you go into a place of celebration, making you think you've won before it's even finished, by letting you feel my fear. And then the moment you do that, I've got a window and you're out of the game, because that was my key to start to play with that. And then also play with other people. So I would use certain physical things like a sharp touch or a sharp voice or a sharp feel. I might grab someone and get a sharp feel to trigger their adrenaline. So I could switch your adrenaline on by climbing inside and going click, adrenal dump. Or if I thought you were using the adrenaline and you were dangerous with the adrenaline, I'd switch it off by saying, I'm no threat, I don't want to fight, you've already won. So you can start really playing with it. So we did that on a very practical level every night by literally having the control of your own adrenaline and then going in and controlling theirs, on, off. And then later on, of course, not to the level of violence, but to the level of just saying, listen, there's no threat here. We started to develop loophole techniques to give people a loophole. We recognised that at some level everybody wants to escape conflict, so we would give them an honourable loophole. So we would say, would you mind not kicking off in this place for me? I know this guy's upset you, and I know you probably deserve, he probably deserves to be hit. But would you mind, for me, as a favour to me, as a personal favour to me, please don't do it in this place. This is my home. This is where I work. So the guy can go away and say, I'm not going to kick off tonight, but it's only because he's asked me personally. So I give him an honourable exit. So you start to use discourse and higher levels of discourse to control situations, give people ways out. So sometimes you would posture. Sometimes I would do a massive posture, make myself big, salivate, balloon, to trigger their adrenal dump, to trigger their flight syndrome, so they'd want to run away, and they nearly always did. You make it very real, so they feel like they're an antelope and you're a lion, and that's how it feels to them. And you would practice that as well. You practice posturing and ballooning. It has a tremendous effect.
Front, another word for that?
Like front, but the intent needs to be there. Massive intent. And then you would use words. You would use words in an act of destruction, but ultimately doing it to protect them. You've given them a way out of the physical conflict, because most people don't know what they're getting into, but you're doing it. But you're destroying their mind to make them run away, but you're doing it for the right reason. So that's what in hermetics they would call that heka, magic words. So we would use magic words. We would use we would invoke potential or invoke God with our words. We'd go bang, really expand. And the ultimate, then, that's at that level of physical violence. At the higher level, at the level of the shaman, which is where we work now, it would be evoking words to heal. So when you're talking to people, so if I'm using words to this camera now, I'm using aligned words coming from Logos. My intention is to heal, is to educate, to inspire, to aspire, to grow. So I'm using words of power to align people to their greatest potential. What this would be considered, what we're doing here together, would be considered delivering the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is a spiritual discourse that we give to somebody to align them to their potential, so they go, oh no, I could do that.
Yeah.
So so at the one level you've got it, you're using it to control violence or to be violent. At the highest level you're using it just to heal. So you can use it catabolically or anabolically. You can use it to destroy, or you can use it to create. All I want to do is create. I'm not interested in destruction in any sense, because I did that, and it's impossible to destroy other people without destroying yourself.
Yeah.
You can't be violent to other people without first processing violence in your own body. Mandela said, I think I said this earlier, but Mandela said holding a grudge or non-forgiveness or violence, holding a violent thought to somebody, he said it's like drinking poison and hoping that your enemy will drop dead. It makes no sense. No. So what I'd rather do is recognise that when I'm kind, when I work from Logos or from love or from powerful purpose, when I'm generous, 100 billion cells are infused with generosity, with love, with kindness. So it serves me to serve other people in a very profitable, very pragmatic way, not in a kind of theological way where it's just a theory or a metaphor. In a very practical way, my body is infused with love when I deliver love. So working from the frequency of love is the ultimate aim. And this is what the Torah, the Old Testament, Genesis, Exodus, all that. Genesis, when it talks about God created the world in 7 days, the subtext of that is that man was created over 7 stages, and the 7th stage was where he worked from selfless service, he worked from love. And at that level of working from love, the service itself was the reward, because when you served somebody else, you dissolved separation and felt bliss. So then it just became about finding as many ways as possible to serve from Logos.
That kind of links in, and I think you have an understanding, or I feel you have an understanding of this, that we are not as separate as people perceive that
Separation's
we are.
An illusion.
We're all joined together, we're all linked.
Literally.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, science tells us that we have 100 billion cells, and those 100 billion cells are literally connected by energy to everything.
So me hurting you, I'm actually hurting myself.
Physically, physiologically, biologically, psychologically, spiritually, in a very real terms. Yeah, because I can't be violent to you without first processing violence in me. So that violence is a caustic, as well as your normal cause and effect. The reciprocal universe, all that kind of stuff. We actually, the moment I do something negative to you, I am my own karma, because it's on my skin, it's in my cell. 100 billion cells are infused with what I did to you. So if I'm living with a violent mindset, and I'm with my children, that will resonate into them. It'll resonate into my wife. It'll resonate into my business. It'll resonate into everything. So we can't be violent to one person without being violent to everything. Yeah. So scientifically, biologically, everything inside of us is joined. Every cell is joined. But scientifically, everything in the universe is joined by energy, everything. So I think it was Leonardo da Vinci said, if a bird lands in a tree, the whole world changes, because everything affects everything. But it's literal. Then once you get that, when you understand reciprocity, I think that's how you pronounce it, I can never get that word. When you understand the reciprocal universe, it becomes a very exciting place to live, because you think everybody I serve from love is going to serve me. Everything I put out there is going to come back in very real terms. So it makes you just want to go out and find people to serve, but not because you want to be a great bloke, but because you understand that in serving you it serves me.